What if the food you have been avoiding to protect your kidneys is the very food you misunderstood? From the beginning? Not soda, not alcohol, not fast food, an egg. That is the twist nobody explains clearly, because every week, older adults hear words like creatinine, kidney strain, protein restriction, and many of them do the same thing. They go home, open the refrigerator, look at eggs, and start treating them like danger. They cut them out first. They fear the protein. They fear the yolk. They fear making their kidneys work harder. But here is the problem. For many older adults, the fastest mistake is not always eating the wrong food. Sometimes it is fearing the wrong food, while the real pressure keeps building somewhere else in the meal pattern. Too much sodium, too many processed sides, too much hidden sugar, too many packaged shortcuts, too little attention to blood pressure, blood sugar, and the foods surrounding the egg itself. And before this video ends, I am going to give you one simple 8-second kidney breakfast check that can help you tell whether your egg meal is supporting a smarter routine or quietly pushing your kidneys in the wrong direction. So, stay with me, because I'm going to bring that back near the end. This is educational, not personal medical advice, but it may help you ask better questions, understand your meals more clearly, and stop making fear-based decisions that hurt you in the long run. And that matters, because kidney nutrition is not one-size-fits-all. Guidance from major kidney and diabetes organizations keeps pointing back to the same truth. Stage matters, labs matter, blood sugar matters, blood pressure matters, and the full food pattern matters. Some people need tighter limits. Some need better protein quality. Some need potassium guidance. Some need phosphorus guidance. Some need to protect muscle and energy, not just cut food out blindly. So today, I want to stay close to the source idea, but make it stronger, clearer, and useful. Let's go through 6 egg combinations from this topic in a smarter order, and let's start with the one that builds credibility fastest. Number 6. Eggs with tomatoes. This is where so many people make the wrong move too early. The moment they hear the word potassium, they panic. They remove tomatoes completely. They stop asking questions. They stop looking at labs. They stop looking at portion size. They stop looking at the rest of the meal. Fear takes over, and the menu gets smaller overnight. But smarter kidney eating does not work that way. Tomatoes are not automatically right for everyone, and they are not automatically wrong for everyone either. The real issue is whether potassium decisions are being made from actual lab values and individualized guidance, or from fear. And this matters because potassium decisions should follow labs, not fear. When people start guessing, instead of personalizing, kidney-friendly eating becomes more confusing than it needs to be. Now, here is the useful part of this pairing. When tomatoes are prepared properly and used in a modest amount, they can add flavor, moisture, and color to eggs without forcing the meal toward sugary ketchup, processed sauces, or salty packaged add-ons. Cooked tomatoes also contain lycopene, a compound studied for antioxidant effects. But the real practical win is not that tomatoes magically heal kidneys. It is that this pairing helps many people build a fresher egg meal instead of a breakfast built around salt, sugar, and convenience. I remember one older woman who had removed tomatoes completely because she was afraid they would harm her kidneys. But when we looked closely, the larger problem was not the tomato she had cut out. It was the daily pattern she had kept: salty packaged foods, sweet sauces, and almost no attention to what her labs were actually saying. A practical example would be this: 1 egg cooked with a small amount of softened tomato and onion instead of eggs drowned in bottled sauce or eaten beside processed breakfast meat. Same kitchen, same breakfast slot, very different direction. And if that already makes sense to you, type tomato in the comments. Just one word. It reminds other viewers that kidney eating should be guided by facts, not panic. Now let's move to the next one, because this is where the kidney story connects directly to blood sugar. Number 5. Eggs with bitter melon. At first glance, this sounds like one of those foods people either trust too much or dismiss too quickly. Some viewers hear bitter melon and think miracle. Others hear bitter melon and think no chance. But the real point is deeper than the ingredient. One of the quiet drivers of kidney decline over time is unstable blood sugar. It does not usually announce itself with drama. It builds through repetition. High after breakfast, high after lunch, high after dinner, day after day, year after year. And that creates more metabolic pressure for the kidneys to handle. This matters because blood sugar instability can add long-term pressure to the kidneys. When glucose runs high repeatedly, the kidneys are forced to filter in a harder environment, and that background strain matters. That is why this pairing deserves attention. Bitter melon has been studied for blood sugar-related effects, and while it is not a cure and should never be treated like one, it can fit into a more thoughtful meal pattern. For some people, when combined with eggs, the bigger value may be that the meal becomes less centered on refined starches and sweet breakfast habits. I worked with a man in his late 50s who felt trapped between early kidney concerns and unstable blood sugar. What finally helped him was not perfection. It was building a steadier breakfast, 1 egg, bitter vegetables a few times a week, less sweet bread, fewer sugary drinks, less chaos in the first meal of the day. A practical example here is a modest egg and bitter melon meal, replacing a breakfast of sweet coffee, white toast, and fruit juice. Not dramatic, just more stable. And that stability matters, because the kidneys do not only respond to what is on the plate, they respond to the metabolic pattern, repeated after the meal is over. Now here is the next step, and this one sounds ordinary enough that many people miss how important it really is. Number 4. Eggs with onions. This pairing does not sound flashy. That is exactly why it is useful. People spend so much time chasing exotic solutions that they ignore the foods that quietly change the quality of a meal every day. Onions can add depth, aroma, and satisfaction without relying on processed flavor packets, salty meats, or packaged shortcuts. That may seem small, but repeated small decisions are often what shape kidney pressure over time. This matters because sodium affects blood pressure, and blood pressure directly shapes kidney strain over time. If onions help you build an egg meal with less sodium around it, that is not a cosmetic improvement. That is a kidney-relevant shift. The source connects onions with vessel relaxation and circulation. A more grounded way to keep that idea is this. Onions contain compounds that have been studied for vascular benefits, but the strongest practical lesson is still about what they replace. Think about the contrast: eggs with onions and a side of vegetables versus eggs with bacon, processed cheese, packaged hash browns, and a salty seasoning mix. Same egg, different burden, because many older adults are not really being hurt by one plain egg. They are being hurt by the pattern built around it and by the pressure that pattern keeps placing on blood pressure, vessel health, and kidney workload. Now let's move to the next pairing, because this is where the conversation becomes more personal. For many older adults, number 3, eggs with chives. This one matters, because for many people, the problem is not just fatigue. It is frustration, constant bathroom trips, that nagging urgency, the feeling that the bladder is running the day. Now, to be clear, eggs with chives are not a treatment for urinary problems. Frequent urination can be linked to diabetes, medications, bladder conditions, prostate issues, fluid timing, and many other causes. But there is still a practical lesson worth keeping from the source. Chives add flavor without pushing the meal toward salty, processed toppings. And when the meal becomes simpler and lighter overall, some people find it easier to build a steadier routine around it. This matters because hidden sodium and irritating meal patterns can indirectly worsen the conditions that make kidney management harder, especially when blood pressure and fluid balance are already part of the picture. So, the value of this pairing is not hype. It is control. Control over flavor without oversalting. Control over the meal without packaged extras. Control over the routine instead of letting convenience make the decision for you. A practical example would be 1 egg lightly cooked with fresh chives at lunch. Instead of a restaurant-style egg dish, loaded with cheese, processed meat, and salt, that swap does not promise a miracle. It simply lowers noise in the system. Now we go one layer deeper, because kidney strain is not only about what enters the body, it is also about how well the body moves, what it needs to move. Number 2. Eggs with wood ear mushrooms. This is one of the more traditional-sounding pairings in the source, so it helps to explain it carefully. The reason it deserves a place in the video is not because it sounds ancient or mysterious. It deserves a place because it points towards circulation, and circulation matters to the kidneys. These organs are full of tiny filtration structures that depend on consistent blood flow and a stable internal environment. This matters because your kidneys are built on blood flow. If circulation is struggling and the meal pattern keeps adding pressure through sodium, sugar, and processed choices, the kidneys feel that burden. Over time, wood ear mushrooms have been studied for properties related to blood flow and blood viscosity, which is why they often show up in traditional conversations. But again, I do not want viewers hearing magic. I want them hearing mechanism. The stronger lesson is this: when mushrooms are paired with eggs, they can help build a more balanced meal that does not need to lean on processed meats or heavy breakfast foods. A practical example here is a simple sauté of mushrooms with one egg, lightly seasoned. Instead of eggs beside sausage, white toast, and a sweet drink. That contrast tells the kidney story much better than a dramatic claim ever could. And now we arrive at the final pairing, the one that sounded the most traditional at the start, but still carries a useful message when interpreted the right way. Number 1. Eggs with mugwort. If I had opened the body with this, some viewers would have checked out too early. But now you can see where it fits. The source describes mugwort in terms of warmth, nighttime relief, and lower body support. A more careful way to keep that value is to focus on the meal context. A lightly cooked egg with herbs may be gentler than the kind of salty, greasy, late-day meal that leaves some older adults feeling heavy, restless, and uncomfortable at night. This matters because late-day meal patterns can affect sleep, fluid timing, and how much strain the body feels overnight. And when sleep suffers, recovery suffers too. I remember a 6-7-year-old woman who had not slept through the night in a very long time. She had already cut out protein because she thought eggs were part of the problem. But once she stopped fearing the egg itself and started simplifying the whole pattern around evening meals, she finally began noticing more stable nights. Not because one herb cured her kidneys, because the routine became lighter, calmer, and less punishing. A practical example here is one lightly cooked egg with herbs and very modest seasoning, instead of a heavy, salty evening meal that keeps the body working long after dinner is over. And now, just like I promised at the beginning, here is the 8-second kidney breakfast check. Before your first bite, pause and ask 3 questions. Where is the salt? Where is the sugar? Where is the shortcut? That is it. Where is the salt? Where is the sugar? Where is the shortcut? If the shortcut is processed meat, bottled sauce, sweet coffee, fruit juice, instant seasoning, or a packaged side, that is usually the part of the meal that deserves attention first, not the plain egg. And that is why this rule is useful. It does not force you to memorize a complicated kidney diet overnight. It helps you catch the hidden pattern before the meal becomes another quiet hit against your kidneys. If you want to remember that rule, type check in the comments. Just one word. So what is the real takeaway from all of this? Not that every older adult should eat eggs. Not that every ingredient in this video is right for every kidney. Not that tomatoes, bitter melon, onions, chives, wood ear mushrooms, or mugwort are kidney cures. The real lesson is this: for many older adults, the egg is not the danger. The hidden pattern around it is the sodium, the sugar, the processed extras, the fear-based restriction, the guesswork, the habit repeated so often, it stops feeling like a choice. So know your labs, know your EGFR, know your UACR, Ask whether your potassium, phosphorus, protein, sodium, and blood sugar guidance is actually individualized for you. Because once you stop fearing the wrong thing, food gets less confusing. And when food gets less confusing, protecting your kidneys gets more realistic. If this video helped you, type "good" in the comments. Just one word. And share this with a brother, sister, spouse, or friend around your age who may still be cutting out the wrong foods, while the real pressure points stay hidden. You do not need a perfect diet tonight. You need a clearer pattern, starting right now.